Well, hello everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live stream poetry podcast on the planet, in your ear and on your laptops. Our guest for episode number 300, a big round number, is Michael Lavers. He'll be here in about 5 minutes or so, but before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet will be much appreciated, especially telling your friends. Leave reviews. I don't say that enough, but leave reviews on iTunes or Spotify or Amazon or wherever else you're listening. That also helps too. Just the more you can do to say you like this stuff, the more people get to hear it. And that's what we always want to do, given our mission. Now, as always, we're going to start out with our Poets Respond poem. And we've got a wonderful poem today by a very familiar face. Abby E. Murray is back. Hey, Abby, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to see you. So glad you can make it despite the flight, I guess, not too long ago. But you look great. You look very alert. So it's good to see you.
Thanks.
Yeah, and
I just woke up like 10 minutes ago, so that's great.
Well, excellent. So what can you tell us about this poem and how it came to be?
I wrote most of this poem on my phone while I was waiting for a train. I was traveling, I was out of the country for the 4th of July holiday, and it was really on my mind that I was glad to be out of the US during the 4th of July. But then I happened to be wandering through museums and historical places that showed me that even though I was out of the US, I was definitely not very far away from oppression and dictatorship and war. And that's something I write about really often is the impact of war on all of us. So that's kind of how this started.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, why don't you go ahead and read the poem so we can have a listen.
Yeah, I'd love to. Ode to the grimy breeze of an underground subway platform. The list of things I'd rather not be thankful for is growing in this latest heat wave. I just took a picture of an almost perfect lotus, hot pink and half bloomed as it sipped the voiceless pond water of a dictator's garden. The train that will take me back to where I can shower and sleep rips into the station like a flame inside an oven. It shoves grime in my lungs and with the same breath cools the sweat on my face. I welcome it and cough. Thousands of miles away, the country where I was born prepares to celebrate the freedoms it holds hostage beneath a sky full of fireworks, gigantic blossoms of light that sparkle and fade in the stagnant dark. I don't want to be amazed by beauty anymore, especially beauty in its smallest forms, minimized by fear. Yet here I am, stopping to stare at the way soft smoke dances, slow and unafraid on the tip of an armed guard's cigarette. Everywhere I look, there is tyranny. Everywhere I look, there is goodness. This contradiction is killing me. It is the only thing keeping me alive.
Yeah, wonderful poem, Abby, as always. And that ending especially is so great. And I wonder, this is one of those poems that you dance around the images and like your surroundings so long, and then you get into that ending, the point you really wanted or really needed to get out. When did you have a sense that that's where you were going? Did you have an idea of that going in or halfway through? Did you know you were leading up to that thought, or did that thought sort of appear on its own? Because it's interesting. There's almost like multiple possible endings, and you wrote like a few in a row. And each one, it's a little different the way it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know how I was going to say it. Like, I didn't know it was going to end on those four clipped lines like that. But I knew that I wanted to write. I started writing the poem about contradiction. And I was thinking about, while I was standing on the platform, this train ripped in and it was this hot breeze. But I was like, oh, thank God, because it like cooled the sweat on my face. And I was like, oh, what's something else that I'm really thankful for that's kind of gross, or like I shouldn't be thankful for this, or it's a double-edged gratitude, where you're thankful for it, but it's also not good. And I was like, oh, kind of like my home country. And so I was trying to write that poem about the contradiction. And then I think I started at the beginning of the poem, of what I'm thankful for that I'd really rather not be thankful for. But I rewrote it a few times to get it that way.
Yeah. Well, great lesson on how to go about it, as you always give. And
Oh,
also, I was wondering, do you have any books coming up? Are you working on a manuscript at any point? It's been a bit, so I was thinking about that not too long
yeah.
ago.
I actually, okay, this wasn't staged just to tell you this, but I do have my book just came out like 2 weeks ago.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
Oh
and
wow.
I promise we're not faking this. This is not.
No, we're definitely not, but
Um,
it would be good if we were. So yeah. So what's it
yeah.
called? Recovery? Sorry, I didn't catch it. Recovery.
Yeah, it's called Recovery Commands,
Hmm.
and it just came out in June, and the book looks absolutely beautiful. Tomohiro Inaba's art is on the front of that. That's an iron sculpture, and um, I you can find it on my website. You can Google it, and it'll pop up. And I have a third manuscript that I'm just now going to start sending out maybe next month.
Hmm.
So it'll probably be another 4 years before that sees the light.
Well, that's great. Well, congratulations on that. Very cool, and I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, looking forward to reading it myself. Thanks, Abby.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you, Tim.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, of course, that was Abby E. Murray, a regular. I think this might put them as number one on the. It always, every time Abby appears, I think maybe she overtakes somebody. Alison Luderman's up there, and Alejandro Escudé. It's probably like 15 times maybe Abby's been in Poets Responds, so it's wonderful to have her as always. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Michael Lavers. So sit tight. We'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Like I said, today's guest is Michael Lavers. Michael's the author of 2 books of poems with the University of Tampa Press. Just a great press, actually. People don't talk enough about Tampa Press. After Earth, which came out from them in 2019, and more recently, The Inextinguishable from 2023. He's been awarded the Chad Walsh Poetry Prize, the University of Canberra's Vice-Chancellor's International Poetry Prize, and the Michigan Quarterly Review Page Davidson Clayton Prize for Emerging Poets. He has degrees from BYU, Hopkins University, and the University of Utah. Together with his wife, the writer and artist Claire Åkebrand, and their 2 children, he lives in Provo, Utah, and teaches at BYU. And here he is, Michael Lavers. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Tim. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, to be honest, you're one of those poets, I don't know much about you, but I come across your poems, because I read 32 Poems is one of my favorite literary journals.
Yeah.
I've seen you there, and I admire your poems. I like the ones we published in
Oh, thank
Rattle.
you.
And so it's one of those, every time I see you in a table of contents, I'd like, oh, that's probably good. And then I go read the poem. So it's great to meet you, and I'm looking forward to get to know you better.
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for the invitation. I'm grateful for Abby for their wonderful poem. That set such a beautiful tone for the conversation. Hopefully, I don't ruin it, but for the phrase "freedoms we hold hostage" from their poem is that's going to stay with me. That's very haunting and sad and beautiful. And yeah, so I want to thank them for that poem. It was
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, definitely. Abby's just a treasure. Let's start out with a poem pretty quickly. What do you want to read first?
Well, I could read this poem called "The Happiest Day of Your Life"
Great, yeah.
first. This is called "The Happiest Day of Your Life." You wake up and hear rain. You wake up and think there's not enough rain, not enough songs about rain or memories of rain, of being numbed or warmed by rain. You wake up, your eyes are open. Lilies in a moss green bowl, elms through the window moving their hands like cellists. Books exists, and paintings and pillows, Blue Mountain and Saddle Mountain, Abundance Creek, Alpha Centauri, Delft. The woman in your dream was putting down a crate of oranges, but then you woke up remembering there is custard. There is Verdi, there is smoke-filled late fall air, and even joy in what it feels like to grieve, wanting to sleep instead of bear what you must, like finishing the best book in the world. You wake up wanting to try. You try. Here in the swirling eddies, in the dark river of time and decay, there is rain. There is this day. There is this day and no other. Praise it with trumpets and zithers. Praise it however you can.
Yeah, it's a beautiful poem to kick it off. That is the happiest day of your life. And what stands out in that poem is the sort of the peaceful grace of the voice. There's all those end stops in the fragments, that slow coming out with a kind of wisdom, which is really interesting to hear. But the first poem that I read of yours, and that was in Rattle, it was in issue 35, was Coda, which is a sonnet. And I've seen
Yeah.
some other formal work too that's probably older. So I'm curious about that. Have you transitioned away from form, or do you still sort of mix it up? Do you still write in form?
I do still write in form. I go back and forth. I think I'm just an omnivore in terms of both my tastes as a reader and my tastes as a writer. Whatever I'm in the mood for, really. I mean, they both just have formal poems, free verse poems, different flavors. And if I'm writing in form for a long time, I feel a craving arise in me to experiment with something looser or a different type of music, and vice versa. If I haven't rhymed for a while, I feel myself starting to get the itch. There's just so many ways to have fun as a poet, and I feel greedy to experiment with all of them. Yeah. So no, I haven't abandoned it for sure.
Do you find it's hard to shift back and forth? I feel like when I write in form, I get stuck in sort of just only wanting to do that, and it's hard to sort of break out, and then it's hard to write in free, like because you end up like falling into it accidentally, and you're like, no, I don't want to do that. Do you
I think,
find
yeah,
that? Hmm.
I do. Well, yeah, maybe the spells. I don't. I can't say that I've ever written one free verse poem, then a formal poem, then a free verse poem, then a formal poem. I go more in phases. A few months where I'm kind of obsessed with the music of rhyme and meter, and then that kind of patters. That flame kind of dies, and then I'm obsessed with a different type of music. But yeah, you get locked in a certain um, dance step. And it is hard to jump from one type of dance to another, poem by poem. But, a few months go by and you're ready for something else. At least that's my experience.
Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem.
Well, I could read Coda.
Yeah. Do
Um,
you want to read that? Yeah, sure.
jumping the order here. I don't know, maybe, but since you brought it up,
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
this is Coda. From the garden rose the sound of bees that lurched and wobbled through the peonies. We ate eggs and toast with milk that warmed in minutes in the sun while fat drones swarmed and looped like bullets misfired from the fields. It was the sound the mind makes when it yields to glutted blood. I didn't understand until one smelled the syrup on your hand and, in a gold-encrusted drunken strut, smeared pollen from its mandibles and gut along your wrist. That morning you had tied your hair, and as you rose and ran inside, it gently bounced and loosed and then unfurled. If the next is better, I'll still miss this world.
Yeah, that's one of those great last lines, set up so carefully, and then just one, straight through final line of that sonnet. What can you tell us about your background as a writer? Like, how did you become a poet? There's some interest incident that made you first fall in love with poetry?
Yeah, I could pinpoint an instant or two. But the most honest, I try to answer this question as honestly as possible, and the answer really is laziness. I think I'm a poet because of laziness, and that's half tongue in cheek, half true. I wanted to be a novelist when I was a teenager, but just didn't have the guts or the stamina to attempt to write something that would take years and probably fail. It was too daunting of a task. And so I thought, well, what can I write if I don't have the courage to commit to a project that big or the endurance to stick with it for that long? What could I write? I want to be a writer. And these poems, they look small enough. I thought, hey, I could do that. If it fails, what's at stake? I've wasted what, a day? These were my naive assumptions back as a teenager. So that kind of, I don't know, I can humorously say of myself, it was kind of cowardice hurt me into poetry, to kind of quote, paraphrase Auden, I think. Um, and then as a student, as an undergraduate student, I was attending readings. We had a really vibrant reading series at Brigham Young University where I was an undergraduate student. We still do. We host a poet or fiction writer or nonfiction writer every week, of national or even international repute. It's a really vibrant scene, and I would attend those every week. And I remember when the poet Mark Halliday visited, and I give him a lot of credit for turning me into a poet because if people listening have not heard him read, first of all, you should go get his books and read them. Then secondly, you should go find recordings of or video of him reading. It just cracked open for me what poetry could do. I didn't know poetry could do that. And by that, I mean something like be so natural, so informal, so wonderfully irreverent, so funny. There was nothing stodgy or pretentious about it. He's a very erudite poet in a way, very smart, a poet of high intelligence, but totally accessible to, a 20-year-old who had never really taken poetry seriously. So he was definitely one of my most important gateway drugs.
Were there a specific poem that you loved?
He had, by Mark Halliday, you mean?
Yeah.
There's a poem, I don't know you put me on the spot here. The title is something like Ode to Clouds or On the Clouds or something like this. And I'll never forget this. Before the reading, he slipped members of the audience pieces of paper, and they were just like some of my classmates, just undergraduates, and they were prompted, okay, when he gets to this part in the poem, start saying the stuff that he's printed out for you. So all of a sudden, out of this reading, somebody in the audience started talking at the poet in the words that the poet had written for this person, but he wrote for them this kind of wonderful dialogue, and the dialogue was pushback on the poem. Like he wrote a script where the audience kind of fights back or critiques the poem, and then the performance of the poet has to kind of defend his own work live during the reading. And I just thought, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So yeah, I don't know if a recording of that performance exists, but I found it really exhilarating.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it makes me, so much. It's an oral tradition, poetry, and yet we
Exactly.
focus so
Yeah.
much on the page and that that private experience of reading a poem, sort of by yourself in bed or on in a chair next to a single lamp, with everything else falling away. And yet it is a performative medium, that's a performance that we do on the page. And then it's a
Yeah.
performance space that we create when we share poems too. And so often I think as poets, we don't pay enough attention to that and to make it an engaging performance, which is part of the, problem with a lot of great poetry and a problem that, the slam and performance, field takes in a different direction, and they really run with that, but we don't. Why do you think that is? And do you think about the performance of your poems more than most, given that initiation that you had?
That's a great question. I sadly don't. I mean, maybe I didn't take those lessons I learned from Mark Halliday close enough to heart. I think you've done a great job. I think you've built, and this isn't just idle flattery, I really mean it. I think Rattle, the journal, the podcast, what you've done with the Poets Respond series has made a huge impact on the way that poetry has become uh, a creator and a nourisher of community, that we can all gather around poetry to respond to contemporary events, as opposed to just treating poems like messages in bottles that may or may not find readers. No, poetry has always been something that has organized societies and that has nourished relationships and friendships and that has gathered people instead of isolated people. I have no theories. I'm not, pretend to know why we've kind of isolated ourselves into solitary readers, but I do find myself to be a product of that cultural trend. I don't think enough probably about the ways my poem sound out loud at readings in performance. I do notice though that when I'm invited to read, I definitely pick certain poems more than others because I don't know, they just live in a different way off the page.
Yeah. Do you find that over the last few years there are fewer, live readings in public too? I know, all I can go. You have that bias of just what's available to you and what you see, and I get bogged down with other things. Having all these podcasts that we do, having like 4 or 5 hours of podcasts a week, I don't get out as much as I used to. We used to have a festival that was live that, really because after COVID, just the audience didn't show up as much and other things happened. We sort of dropped that. And, we dropped our regular reading series to make the Rattlecast. And so I'm not, and then when I've gone back to old reading series, when I'm back in towns I've been in before, the crowd seems smaller, the energy seems diluted. But I don't know if that's just my imagination. Do you find that there are fewer just public readings than there used to be?
Maybe I'm not the person to ask. I don't think my finger is really on the pulse of that, although I wouldn't be surprised if COVID had whittled the audience away. Podcasts have stolen a bit. You can attend readings, quote unquote, without having to attend them, so that's a factor as well. But surely these were temporary trends. Poetry is immortal, and I think the sharing of poetry is immortal. It's never going anywhere. If public readings are suffering, my prediction is that they'll rebound. This must be temporary.
Yeah. Well, I think so too. And I think these spaces are wonderful. And speaking of which, if you haven't clicked the like button yet, there are more than twice as many people watching live on YouTube that have clicked like so far. And if I remind you, then you're more likely to click it. So click the like button if you haven't yet. That way more people can come in. We can have more people in the audience and fewer podcasts too. Future podcasts too. Do you want to go ahead and read another poem?
Yeah. I'll read this elegy for my mother. This is called You're Going. My mother died when I was 19 and she was in her late 40s, much too young. And something that I knew, I couldn't write about this for the longest time, not because it was too emotionally distressing to me, but just because I found it impossible to write. There's this wonderful bit in Hamlet where Claudius is saying, "'Tis the common theme." He says the death of fathers, but the death of parents is the common theme of nature, the most common theme, which means it's the most cliche prone. So I couldn't write about this for years and years and years. And finally, this poem came out, and I'm pleased enough with it to have included it in my book. This is called You're Going. You were going. You were going to go. Your daughter was driving all night to come see the mother she knew, but that mother had already gone. Your husband was going to forbid you from going, but failed. The rain ended and the sun said, wait, but you could not wait. Sorrow propelled you and joy propelled you to finish your going, to go, to be gone, to have the day release you from your task of being here as your reward for having been. What could we say of you that would survive? What last report would give you safety, or give thanks to those we hoped would salvage you? I stepped to the window and looked at the pink evening sky and sipped water and thought, I am drinking. We waited. We ate the cherries you bottled. We fell to silence or quarrels, but you were still going, still finding your way. You wanted to say no, but did not know how. You wanted to say yes, but it was being said for you. The dishes were cleared, the rain stopped. The rain stopped, the moon rose, the shadows dragged their blue skirts through the corn, and your going was gone. Then you went, and the room in your absence grew noisy. You went with the rest of us already following. You went, and the world is now only the world.
Yeah, another beautiful poem. That was Michael Lavers reading You're Going from The Inextinguishable. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, I saw on an interview with you that talking about how the voice in your poem seems to say things you don't believe, which I found very interesting. You know, I think you mentioned that the voice in this book often feels like it believes in a soul, and you feel like you can't. And so I'm really curious about that disparity and how, the truth of what the speakers say is somehow different than your truth, or where that lies,
Well, Abby teed this up beautifully in their poem at the start, where it ended with that kind of wonderful, this mix of tyranny and happiness and the contradiction that tears us all apart. And we all contain multitudes. I hate to refer to Yeats when talking about myself because it makes it sound like I'm comparing myself to him, but he has this wonderful letter where he's talking about the importance of surprise in any creative act. And he's talking about Shakespeare. And he says to this person he's writing this letter to, do you suppose for a single moment that Shakespeare put ideas into the mouth of King Lear or Hamlet? Yeats says, no, not for a single minute. He says, Lear and Hamlet taught Shakespeare Lear and Hamlet taught Shakespeare things that Shakespeare had no idea of. And through this process, Shakespeare learned that he was an altogether different person than who he thought he was. And I think that's so beautiful and so true. It's not that the voice of my poems is a kind of fake persona, or that I say things in my poems that I don't believe. It's that I find out truths in the act of writing that I don't know that I know. I didn't know that I knew. So it's an act. I mean, this isn't news to anybody. I think this is a theory as old as time. Plato talks about this, sure, in 100 places. When the muse whispers to us, she tells us things that are true, but we didn't know that we knew, And so that's what I think poetry is for. It's an act of exploration and discovery. And I do feel like when I read great art, that I'm in contact with something eternal and sacred and divine. And this sounds like I'm tooting my own horn. I feel that way too when I'm writing, but I feel like any act of creation, any act of giving, raking somebody's lawn, a kid drawing with crayons, making someone a casserole, singing someone a song to cheer them up. This goes back to our discussion about communal activity. These are divine and sacred activities. And I think in them we discover something about goodness, beauty, truth, love, meaning, that if we didn't do these things, we would never know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm wondering, so often we say, that we learn things we didn't know we knew. But then if you think about the way that line about Shakespeare learning from King Lear, there's also a way that our imagination is like creates a sandbox that we can play in to learn something. If you watch a kid, yes. like we just got my son a 3D printer for his birthday, and he had no idea what software to use or what he's even doing. And so he opens the box and he's just fiddling around, completely confused, but he's playing with it. And then a few days later, he's printing out this big sword that he's working on all day. And there's a way that we create this imaginary space that we can learn through play. And I wonder if it's more that we do that. It's the empathy that we find when dawning another perspective. And it's the way we make connections that we hadn't noticed. Do you think it's an active process of learning, or do you think it is something that we know deeper down? Or is there a connection? Is there a universal consciousness that we all know everything and we're adding to that? I mean, that's the thing I just always wonder about so much, because you see glimmers of that too in so much of the world.
Well, who knows? I mean, I can't pretend to know, but I think something like this is happening. André Breton says, it is the imagination which alone causes real things. Which I think is so beautiful. It is the imagination alone which causes real things, And so I absolutely think play, when kids are at play, they fall into a world that is for them absolutely real. And when adults are just horsing around online, being immature adults on Twitter saying things, suddenly we create a culture. This goes back to Abby's poem. We're creating reality on things like X. Do you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm straying too much from the question, but
No, no.
I really feel like um, the these mental mind games that we indulge in become much more than games, for good and for ill. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah. Hmm.
haven't we all sensed that the wall between imagination and reality is absolutely porous, and that every once in a while strange gaps appear, passageways, a looking glass, a platform at King's Cross, 9 3/4, a wardrobe that seems to be full of coats, but then you push past the coats and there's pine trees and moonlight and snow and a lamp and a fawn and this whole world. Um, I think these stories, these novels, these poems that we grow up with as children are fancifully reminding us that the imagination and reality intersect in ways that we should not underestimate.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and there's a way that we're manifesting the reality as we go, and people don't like to hear that. It sounds woo woo, and that's why I tried to talk to Dean Radin in an issue of Rattle last year, the parapsychologist, because
Yeah,
there's more to it than that, and it just even on the basic psychological level of we can only understand what we can conceptualize, like the whole world of these models that we put together of like what a book is and what this shape is, and that I'm holding it, and if we don't have that model and understanding, we can't interact with it, and all of our
absolutely.
experience is that. So on the one level, like you can't see things that you can't imagine, you have to imagine them first in order to interact with them.
Absolutely.
And somehow, I mean, it could just be that level, it could just be this psychological block, and the fact that we have the confirmation bias, like so much of what you think. I was watching I rarely go on social media these days, but I just click through as I'm seeing poems, or posting poems. And there was this, I guess on the 4th of July, maybe on the balcony, there's Trump. I don't know if you saw this one, but like he sort of pulls Melania towards him. And half of the internet was like, sure, it was like him like grabbing her, assaultingly,
Yeah.
and that she didn't want
Yeah.
to. And the other half thought it was this loving gesture that was sweet. And I'm looking at all the
Yeah.
reactions,
Yeah.
and it's both at the same time. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's
Yeah.
what your perception is. It changes how you see that. And it's just so fascinating the way that works. And then as poets, that's what we're playing with, I guess. Like that's the space that we live in, is the way that we're modeling and then altering the models as we go.
Absolutely. I mean, it is the imagination alone which causes real things. So if you imagine that this is an act of assault or an act of love, then for you it will be that. What if this is not a game? What if this is deadly serious? What if we have God's power to create on loan to us in some way? And again, I'm not talking about woo-woo or magic, or I'm just thinking if we see the world through X-colored glasses, then that is what the world will be, and we'll act in that world and we'll change it in that way based on those assumptions. So yeah, the stakes are high, I think, and very real.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's why I worry too about the collective negativity that we're all feeling,
Me
and
too.
what that manifests. Like this is sort of the age of misanthropy. I think in no other time in human history has the imagination of the known universe, which is what humans think and imagine, been so focused on how negative humans are. Like there's this sort of
Yeah.
self-destructive impulse and this feeling that we're, so many people say, I see poems all the time, like literally every day when I'm reading submissions, poems about how we're a virus on the planet.
Yeah.
And I worry about how that thought and the thought that that this is the last, because of climate change, this is the last time we're going to live in a, world, and how much
Yeah.
that actually manifests into reality by our behavior. You kind of, you live
Yeah.
at the mercy or in the wake of your own karma, kind of, and propelling that is something I worry about a lot.
I think that's absolutely true. Auden says that poems can do 100 things. They can um, uh, be funny, be sad, be beautiful, be angry. They can revolt, they can support, they can rebel. But there's one thing that all poetry must do. They must praise all they can for being and for happening. They must praise. Um, Again, Abby set the tone very well. There are things about America that we're absolutely justified to hate, but not to the exclusion of all of the reasons to love it. But not just America, every aspect of our lives. I really do believe that great art, even art about the most horrific events of human history, in order to qualify as quote unquote great, it has to, in some way, while being steely-eyed and honest about human suffering, it has to, in some way, affirm life. Life is still worth living. Humankind is still redeemable or redeeming, worthy of redemption. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think there's a religious component too, because I'm not Christian myself, but the idea of original sin seems so important in the way that it offers sort of eternal possibility for forgiveness, you know,
Mm,
and the fact that that the view is that we all have problems and we make mistakes and have a sense of evil inside us that drives us to do wrong, allows us to the opportunity to do good at the same time, and I think when we lose the one, we lose the other. I think
yeah,
that's part of it too.
absolutely. Yeah, poets. Um, so say poets should. A sentence that sounds like I'm pontificating. I wonder if I could rephrase that. I always admire poems that are, or and poets that who are aware of their own weaknesses and doubts and shortcomings as they are about other people's. That's always a good sign.
Yeah, well, this is so fun to talk about, but we want more poems too. Let's do another poem.
Sure. Um, well, I could do another elegy, I guess, for my dad this time. This is a sonnet on the anniversary of my father's death. Another autumn. So another poem about how leaves flare into gold and red, and fuming populate the common loam like the substantial, unsubstantial dead. It's all been said before, how for a while they fall in single and unhurried file, then all at once, spreading a brittle hush over the bee throng and the squirrel rush. Since everything will change but what we say it again. If what we love must mold, if old limbs must unclench and give away their lush particulars into the general flame, we need the leaves next year to look the same. Their newness dazzles us because it's old.
Yeah, another beautiful poem on the anniversary of my father's death, by Michael Lavers. And it must be hard to have both your parents die so young. We've seen those two back-to-back poems, and I wonder, this book is the Inextinguishable, and that topic of what remains is at the heart of the book. How much do you feel like specific things that you're reckoning with in life or what drive sort of all poetry? Like all of your poems, do you find that they cluster around something that your subconscious, for lack of a better word, is gnawing at? At a certain time in your life? Is that what it's really a record of?
For me, that's definitely true. I get preoccupied with certain ideas, hopes, impulses, images, situations, memories, and I write 10 or 12 poems around that thing or out of that thing or directed to that thing. And then when I don't know, I stop when the fuel is gone or when I'm bored of that topic, when I've noticed how repetitive I'm being. But yeah, absolutely. They come in clusters like that. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I guess the follow up to that question is like, how do you know, when there's still something to mine there? And that's the thing. That's the thing that I sort of ponder and play with myself. Is there a point where you've sort of said what you needed to say and are just repeating yourself and need to move on? And how do you recognize that if you do?
well, I think that's one of the things I was trying to play with in this poem about my father's death. It's all been said before, and if everything has to change but what we say it again. I mean, isn't it Ecclesiastes? There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, that's a 3,000-year-old statement. And you could say, well, iPhones are new, Twitter's new, there's some new things. But this is just superficial level changes. Fundamentally, I think in terms of the human condition, um, there are only so many things to say. And it's not I don't think we create art because we feel like there's a lack of information that we want to rectify.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there are Wikipedia pages in this poetry anthology that have not been written yet, so I better go write them. Do you know what I mean? No, that's not what's happening. It's just simply a choral dance. There's nothing really new there's not new content being offered to the human race. There's new experiences. There's the same experience being repeated, just like a dance. repeated because it's somehow nourishing to enact the movements of the dance.
Hmm.
And we enact them in vocabulary that is slightly different, but I think that's all slightly different. And we can't not dance this dance for ourselves in our own way, in our own generation. Pound said, make it new. But the it in that sentence, of course, is what is old, the tradition, So don't jettison it, don't redact it, don't obliterate it, but dance it, the old, in a way that is new, and in a way that is yours. I think that takes, that takes pressure off me. I think when I started writing poetry, I thought, oh, I need wisdom, I need ideas, I need epiphanies, I need dazzling pearls of insight to dispense to my readers, things they've never realized before. But of course, that's an impossible burden to place on yourself, and it's not even necessary. Poetry should delight and instruct, but I think the instruct part is much, for me at least, has been much more an act of being reminded again and again and again of the same old truths that I perpetually forget.
Hmm.
And we all need help doing that, I think.
Yeah, and that's always the fascinating thing about reading classic literature. I remember I read through Catullus's poems, and how just modern, like the worries and the
Absolutely.
problems and the politics and
Absolutely.
everything is just so, it's like 2000 whatever years hadn't happened, and we're just right there. And and it's fascinating that way. Did you feel in dialogue with those? Because I know you reference, especially in After Earth, the first book, you have a lot of references
Yeah.
to, past poets and
Yeah.
writers. Do you feel? I mean, I guess you kind of answered it, but I'm curious more about how much of the dialogue that you feel like
Yeah.
you're partaking in that. Like, is a lot being, they're talking to you and you want to talk back. Is that like a main drive for you?
I think Montaigne expresses it the best for me. He has this essay called On the Education of Children. And when I came across this passage, I surely leapt out of my chair and shrieked because it captured exactly what I feel. It's not so much a dialogue. He says that he finds himself depressed when he discovers, when reading another author, passages about a topic that he has been trying to write, but he finds in these other authors that they far surpass his own very subpar skills at expressing these ideas in as beautiful a way. And so he says, this happens to me all the time. My writing is never as good as the people that I'm reading. But then he says, but I please myself that my opinions have gone in league with theirs, that I follow in the same path as them, though at a very great distance. And at the very least, what I'm doing, I'm now speaking in the voice of Montaigne. At the very least, what I'm doing is that I'm following far behind them and just repeating, how true, how true. I think that's so great. So I would never say that I'm in dialogue with Yeats, you know what I mean? Because I don't feel like I'm conversing with Yeats. I'm not sure he would pay me the time of day, but I feel like I'm like on his trail, in his tracks, saying whenever he says something, how true. And to me, that's good enough. That alone is such a pleasure and such a privilege to get to do. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's what I feel like. And I just read this wonderful book called The Dominion of the Dead. It's by a man named Robert Pogue Harrison. It's really, really beautiful. And he gives what I think is quite an original take on the Orpheus myth. It's a myth that poets have loved for the longest time. We all know this myth, but he makes what I think is an original observation about it, which is that Hades, who says that you don't you can take Eurydice back up out of the underworld, but if you look back, then she's mine. You've lost her forever. And the reason Hades makes this bet with Orpheus is surely because Hades knows that Orpheus is the type of person who can't not look back. In other words, poets are obsessed with the past. They are obsessed with their ancestors. They are obsessed with the dead, the land of the dead, history, what has gone before. This is just the itch that they're perpetually scratching. So I think it's kind of, if you find yourself loving nothing more than perusing dusty stacks of books in the most moth-eaten corners of the library, chances are you're a poet or something like a poet. You know what I mean? Because you're looking back into the depths of the underworld.
Yeah, well, really well said. Let's do another poem.
So this is a poem I wrote during COVID. One of the things I think we all found new, I don't know, hobbies or interests, or we were forced to develop new hobbies or interests when COVID took a lot of our natural hobbies and interests away. And one of the things I noticed around my house was that it was suddenly filling up with cacti. My wife began to collect all these spiky plants. So I wrote this poem during COVID. It's called The Cacti. Then to my safe, dull world they came. Weird birds my wife wanted to tame. Legions of spikes and spines and quills, roosting on tables, crowding sills, maces and morning stars that she rifled from nature's armory. Half-sprung grenades and razor gauze, filling the gaps where softness was. Brought home from nurseries, shipped by mail, 2 inchlings culled from roadside shale illegally, 3 filling shelves with inbred cuttings of themselves, crude cousins in a hunchbacked bloom, colluding across the living room. Here dragon eggs, there devil's phlegm, a barb-encrusted diadem of torturous gold, tantrums of green. Why are they here? What do they mean? She dotes and fawns, but can't appease their antisocial tendencies, and so a dust of spidery hairs, despite the doubled gloves she wears, will keep her scratching where they kissed a bared knuckle, an exposed wrist. If nature doesn't make mistakes, then what are these? And yet she makes more space for them, until our mild, safe house has grown carefully wild with ragged stalks and snarling ropes. She's right. Somehow these misanthropes, these gargoyles, barbed and hairy, sharpen the need for sanctuary, and are proof that paradise is fenced by ugliness and vice. Even perfection needs its flaws, the thrill of risk, the threat of claws. Why be so picky with my praise? Turning the lamps off, she surveys a world of troll, pagan, and infidel, grinning in moonlight. All is well.
Yeah, wonderful poem. That is a COVID poem, The Cacti by Michael Lavers. One of the things that's interesting, you might have noticed, or readers might, or listeners might have noticed, there's a lot of telling in your poems.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating to see and hear, because obviously there's the mantra show don't tell, and yet you seem to sort of delight in getting away with telling, you know. And I wonder about that, like how, first of all, why you're driven to try to do that, and then how you can pull it off successfully, because it's not like, it never feels like that when we say in the workshop, oh, show don't tell, this is too much, we're not getting across. It's moving the poem forward at the same time. So how do you approach that, that dichotomy?
It's funny that you notice that, because it's something I think about a lot and absolutely aggressively it's a dictum I try aggressively to defy whenever I can. I mean, I've just noticed as a reader over the years that the parts of poetry that makes me fall out of my seat or burst into tears or howl with laughter or rush frantically across the house to desperately show somebody you have to read this, 9 times out of 10, the moments in a poem that make me do that are not an image. They are a truth statement, a kind of naked declaration in abstract language about what the author thinks is true. Just for example, all goes onward and outward, nothing collapses, and to die is luckier than we suppose. Perhaps Whitman says, perhaps there really is no death. Wow, I didn't know you could say that in a poem. Shelley in Adonais says, the one remains, the many change and pass. I mean, how many of Shakespeare's most quotable lines are not images, but moments of telling? They're mostly moments of telling, not moments of showing. We show, I think, with the reason we give this dictum to our writing students is because it's a good rule of thumb. It's tried and true. We are sensory creatures and we experience the world through our 5 senses. So it's important and good to appeal to the body. But it's not enough. I don't think it's sufficient. There's a reason why imagism, this poetry movement in the early 20th century, kind of fizzled out, because images can only do so much. They're not, they might get you through the door, but they're not actually what we want to see at the end of the destination. I mean, there's obviously lots of haiku or only images, but actually, if you spend a lot of time reading haiku, what you'll see is a lot of telling, a lot of telling. In fact, I think you'd be hard pressed. I think if you made a list of the best poems ever written, a single digit percentage would be poems that contain no telling.
Mhm.
It's a moment of telling to me is like well, I'll back up. I'll reverse this. Moments of showing are like gasoline. You have to put a bunch of gasoline. I don't know. This metaphor is getting weird. Lighter fluid. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you want a lot of lighter fluid. If you want the flame to go nice and bright and hot, you want a lot of lighter fluid. So put in all these images. But for me, at least as a reader, and maybe this is just my taste, this lighter fluid isn't lit until you have that moment of telling. And there is, oh, that's what all this showing has been for.
Mhm.
That's why my senses were appealed to in the first place, because you had something about life to tell me. And I know I'm rambling now, but I just think also if we rely too much on don't tell, don't tell, don't tell, I've noticed myself, and certainly my students as well, becoming unnecessarily stifled
Mhm.
and nervous. And I think it's very refreshing to be able to say, no, I think I know something, and I'm going to say it.
Mhm.
And I admire, I think that's a kind of wonderfully, refreshingly bold to encounter in a poem.
Yeah, well, that's a great metaphor for it, and one I hadn't thought of before. The lighter fluid, because
I
it
don't know,
is,
not
to
good.
go to a neurological level. I believe what we're doing with poems actually and with art is having, because we have the two sides of our brain that have, that's the master and the emissary, and their Ian
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gilchrist's
I love that
conception
book.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the one has this holistic understanding, sort of nonverbal, thinks in symbols, knows more than we've modeled yet, which is where that sense of not knowing comes from. But what we're really doing is bridging the two. It's making the two hemispheres that are two separate selves, really, because they have two different interests, motivations, ways of seeing the world, come into alignment and agree in a way that they both update their models. And I think that's like the thrill of having the top of your head coming off is that it's this
Absolutely.
two speaking, and to have the two speaking, the real trick of it is so often to have the images and symbolism swirling around, and then having that one spark that's the bridge that lets all that energy through, so they actually discharge, for another metaphor, or mixing so many metaphors here, but discharge like the ions that have built up, you know, and so then it crosses the gap, and then you can model, a new understanding of the world that you sort of knew in that way that wasn't verbal, but it takes that bridge, and so often, like the best, most powerful line in a poem really is a simple declarative statement that's been
Mhm.
like, there's all this potential under it that's been built up, and then you just like touch it with it,
Yeah.
and then it sparks, and then that's how the poem actually works if you really dig down. And you can think of so many examples like that, but it's just it's a real way that it works. I always hate to say the way, but it almost seems like that's the way. you know
I'm so glad you mentioned that Ian McGilchrist book. I read that book and was just totally floored. I read that book as a poet. I think that book has, I mean, I learned from that book as much about poetry as I've learned from any book about poetry.
hmm
Where poetry comes from, why it's valuable, how to do it, what it's for. The Master and His Emissary. Such a good book. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you know, I interviewed him and that's
I didn't
why.
know
Yeah, about 2 years ago. So there's a Rattlecast episode that's just me and him. He's drinking scotch. You should go
that.
watch
No
it.
way. That's how to do it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we got to do another poem. Next up, I've got on cabbages. We go from cacti to
Yeah.
cabbages.
Yeah, that's right. One plant to another. This is a silly little poem. I'll read it. I think it's funny. I mean, not the poem, this epigraph that the poem begins with. I think it's funny. I don't know what Pascal, if did he mean this to be funny? It's hard to say, but this poem, I rarely use epigraphs. They make me slightly nervous, but I couldn't resist. And you can go look this up. This is word for word what he wrote. This is Pascal. He wrote, God alone is man's true good. And since man has abandoned him, it is a strange fact that nothing in nature has been found to take his place, God's place. Stars, sky, earth, elements, plants, cabbages, leeks. I just thought of all the things to put in your list, what could take God's place? I get it. Stars, sky, the earth, elements. What about cabbages? I'm just absolutely astounded at how high cabbages lands in Pascal's list of things that could take God's place. I couldn't believe it. So I had to write a poem about that. This is called On Cabbages. The tide went out, this time for good, there being no more God. Wheat mouldered in the fields, horses wept, but we were not afraid. We had our cabbages. glowing at dusk like bruised, miscarried stars, still cooling, groups of souls gathered around them as around blue flames. We knew our suffering would be full, that we were born into decay, that nothing justified our pain. Nothing, that is, except the cabbages, blooming like bald sea urchins, weird swim bladders steaming in the sun, black slugs cruising their ribbed sea-colored leaves. And when the mudslides came, and the rapacious frosts, some people started bowing down to rhubarb, or to leeks, or praying to eclipses, anything in which they thought the old God hid. But who needs God when there are cabbages, present, in bloom, mysterious and unmysterious, like shy birds caught at their ablutions, hiding from our adoration under folded wine-red wings. Each year they rise out of dead earth. Each year we kneel and pick them up. We take them into us and live.
Yeah, really interesting poem there. That was on cabbages. Yeah, great epigraph too. And you can hear what we were talking about with the telling versus showing, how important the two actually are. What can you say about teaching poetry to people? I mean, how often do you teach poetry, and what do you think the best sort of advice that you give, or the way to push poets forward is?
I love teaching poetry. The more I do it, that's how I earn my living, obviously. So I do it quite a bit, and I love it. The more I do it, the more important it has become to me, much more important even than the writing. Um, but whenever I'm asked, like, how do you do it, or what's the most important thing, or what's your philosophy on teaching, I just draw an absolute blank. I have no idea. It's on one hand, it's very easy because I think poetry, as made manifest in readings and podcasts like yours, poetry is instantly accessible. People think it isn't. It has this reputation of being, I don't know, impossible to understand or way too erudite or whatever. But I regularly see people who, without quote unquote formal training in poetry, having very intimate and profound experiences with poetry. So it's an absolute delight for me to get to initiate those experiences in the classroom and see the effect in real time that poetry has on people. That's just the greatest blessing ever. So on one hand, the teaching of poetry is quite instantaneous, but also the opposite is true. It takes a lot of time and exposure. And I think one thing I'm constantly trying to convince my students of is the need for patience. I think Rilke says this in Letters to a Young Poet, which is a kind of pedagogical book in a way, how to become a poet. That the act of becoming any kind of, well, person really, but certainly creative person, is a very slow and very quiet process. He compares it to the growing of a tree. It takes many, many years for a tree to grow, and I think it takes many, 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 many years for any artistic talent to ripen, to fully ripen. So on one hand, we're off the hook. It's kind of doing itself. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Basho has this great haiku, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. That haiku contains, I think, the essence of how to become a poet. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. Just wait. That's what I constantly am telling my students. Just wait. Just keep reading, keep writing, and then just wait. And pretty soon the acorn or the sapling that you are will turn into this great oak tree. But you just have to wait. It doesn't happen overnight. I love this. There's a poem by Wendell Berry that I love called How to Be a Poet. And it's something else I'm constantly foisting onto my students. And the first two lines of this poem, again, the poem is about a page long, but the first two lines say it all. How to Be a Poet by Wendell Berry. And then under the title, there's this little parenthetical. He says, to remind myself. And then the poem begins, make a place to sit down. Sit down. Be quiet. Which I think is so good. So make a place to sit down, be quiet. I'm constantly noticing in my own life and in the life of others that we put off the act of writing. I loved hearing from Abby that they write a poem a week or an essay a week, because so many other people I know say, well, I am a poet. I write a poem a year, or I would like to be a poet when I, finish this project, or when the kids go to school, or when this, then I'll start writing a poetry. But actually, the moment you start doing it, that's the moment that you are a poet. Do you know what I mean? Make a place to sit down, and then be quiet. Back to Rilke's advice, just be patient.
Oh, yeah. Well, that is such great advice. I should say, in addition to clicking the like button, if you have any questions for Michael, leave them in the chat windows, either on Facebook or YouTube. I can pass any along. It helps, like Carla Schwartz just did, say question, especially in bold, if you can, or capitalize. If you can all caps the question word, then I can pick it out of the lineup really easily. But in the meantime, leave your questions. And in the meantime, let's hear another poem. We've got 2 left, Michael.
This is called There Is a Fire, which was I was lucky enough to have appear in Rattle recently. There is a fire. We try. We water plants so we can watch God bloom. We look at rivers till our sadness feels beautiful. Tumult and peace and tumult again. And we have no idea of what decides, what rises and what falls. My daughter combs her hair, watching the snow come slantly down. There is a world through her seeing itself. We talk about objects because we cannot talk about the hidden radiance. We talk about how Arshil Gorky swam into the Charles to end his life, but then remembered painting and swam joyously back. Of pines, of wind, of how there is a mutual wounding that's required for love. And although no one's asking, I can answer that I write about my children to obtain for them life after death. Why else? There is a fire at the heart of things that can't go out, and we are here and we remember it. We try. A purple comb, slant snow. My children are, which I don't understand, but no disaster's possible. I'm certain that what they truly are was never born, that though the sun shall not endure, they shall endure.
Yeah, another great poem. That was from the spring issue of Rattle. There Is a Fire by Michael Lavers. Let's see what the questions are we have for you. The one Carla Schwartz was asking, she says, speaking of religion, how do you square teaching poetry at a Mormon university? Are there any issues for you, or is that a positive feature for your work?
Oh, for me, it's been nothing but positive. Simply because I believe that poetry has, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but poetry is one of humankind's most potent vehicles for praise. Psalm 150, praise him with loud cymbals, praise him with small cymbals, praise him with the psaltery and the harp, praise him however you can, praise ye the Lord. And it's not just the Lord, it's just his creation. Any act of affirmation. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. That's a poem of intensely rapturous praise. That such mundane objects exist at all means that there's nothing mundane about them. Anytime we open our mouths to notice them, to put the frame of the page over them and say, look at this, means that we're highlighting their sacred mystery. And this, so it's writing poetry, reading poetry, speaking about poetry, sharing poetry, to me is a very sacred and devotional act. Absolutely.
Yeah. And a really interesting example, too, of the telling and the showing there, because that poem, as an images poem, wouldn't work without the so much depends, which
Absolutely.
is, and then you need all the images make sense because of that. But if you were just listing the real wheelbarrow,
it would be unfinished.
So what?
Absolutely
It's the,
unfinished.
yeah. So much depends on that. So much depends.
Yeah.
Another question, Eileen Patterson wants to know, what is the longest time you worked on one poem, and when do you know when to stop? And that reminds me, just more generally, usually we talk about like your process more as the featured poet. We haven't really talked about that yet. So just in general, are you a reviser, and how much time do you spend on poems? And what's your process like when you sit down to write?
Oh, it runs the gamut. It's all over the map. I mean, the longest, there's a long-ish poem at the end of my first book, After Earth. It ended up to be about 7 or 8 pages, but the first draft of it was something like 25 or 30 pages. And I probably worked on that poem. I mean, I can't work on one poem without taking a break and moving on to another poem. So I've usually got 2 or 3 poems on the go, just to keep my attention, I guess, I don't know, interested. But yeah, I mean, that long poem probably took me 6 months the first go around, and then a few years of revisiting it and winnowing it down and adding to it and taking it away. Every once in a while, I write a poem that requires not much touch up. That's a rare event for me. a rare and lucky event. Usually it's a matter of a lot of um, collage. I call it collage work. I don't know if that's really a metaphor that will translate to anyone listening, but I have on the page chunks that I like swatches of color or images, like I've cut out from a magazine or stolen from other poets.
Hmm.
And it's just a matter of what order do these go in? What arrangement pleases me? So I'll try one and step back for a few days or a few weeks and revisit it. And if I like what I see, then I know that I don't need to do that much more tinkering. But often, usually, I don't really like what I see, and it's just more rearranging, subtracting, adding. So I'm very revision heavy. Absolutely.
Hmm. And then another question from Chelsea McClellan. She wants to know, do you find a difference in content or your experience when writing in form versus free verse? That's always interesting to me, too.
Actually, yeah. Uh, that's a smart question because rhyme, yes, absolutely. Rhyme and meter. What I think what you risk when you use rhyme and meter these days is you risk a certain tone of moral, what's the word I'm looking for?
Certainty
Uh,
or something?
exactly, yeah. Kind
Yeah.
of nursery rhyme pablum or moral superiority or religious dogmatism. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So there's absolutely things that I would say in a free verse poem that I would never say in rhyme and meter because it would instantly sound like Robert Frost on a bad day. Robert Frost is one of my favorite poets, but in his work, in his worst poems, there's a kind of apple pie, kind of preachy, jingoistic. I don't know. You know what I mean? So there are ideas or sentiments that I would express stripped of all of that music, and once they're stripped of all that music and let to just sit bare on the page in the most casual or naked music or syntax, they sound much more real. And I think less is being risked.
Hmm.
I hope that answer made sense.
No, no, it definitely does, and that's an interesting take I hadn't really heard before. Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting, and
I
definitely how
mean,
they land is very
just
different.
for yeah, just for one example, I mean, when I say at the end of this poem, there is a fire. Like I'm sure that the sun will not endure, but my kids will endure. It's like, geez, where do you get off saying that?
Hmm.
What an arrogant thing to say. Um, that's an example of maybe what we began the conversation addressing. Do I really believe that? I think I really do. But could I defend it? Is it logical? It's not really logical, you know? And I would never say that in rhyme because I think if I tried to express that in rhyme, man, it's just I would be layering on level of sentimentality on top of cliche, on top of religious dogmatism, and it would just kind of implode under its own pressure, under
Hmm.
its own weight. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Um, well, we're up on time. One last thing I was wondering about if you have anything new, in the pipeline. Do you have some of these poems are new that you've been reading, and it's been a couple years since your last book. Is there a manuscript in progress? Is there something different that the poems or way you're approaching the poems or topics for the next book?
I mean, I wouldn't say that there's a new book very imminent. I've got a slowly growing pile of finished poems that uh, I feel okay about. Very slowly growing pile. If they're different in any way, it's just that they're kind of smaller. I'm writing small poems now. I'm writing less than I used to. Um, Taking my time more. Maybe this is midlife, maybe it's job security, but this urge that I used to feel to write, 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 write has mercifully begun to dampen. And I
Hmm.
say mercifully because it really was a curse for me. Like I have to spend every waking minute writing, writing, writing. And it's been a relief to feel that burden slightly lifted. So the poems are slower in coming, much shorter on the page, briefer. That's been fun to experiment with.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. We've got to reinvent and keep growing as
Yeah,
writers and people too. So
yeah,
interesting to
that's right.
hear. Well, let's close it out with one last poem, and the last one we had was
Yeah. This is called Night Self.
yeah.
It's kind of new, even though it's not that short. This is called Night Self. It's not too late. Oh, I should say this poem also, to the questioner's point about religion, quotes from several different religious traditions and points to different ways in which religion and poetry Prophecy and poetry, the sacred and poetry have always intersected. Night Self. It's not too late. I can still portray summer. I still have time to play the saxophone. Sorry, I still have time to want to play the saxophone if I start now. To say to the houseplants, I love you, I love you. Besides, I've just begun with Botticelli, not to mention the cuisine of Malta, and this biography of Blake I'm flipping through. Quote, you know, dear, the first time you saw God was when you were 4 years old, and he put his head to the window and set you a-screaming. Unquote. Nothing outside my window but some branches, goldenrod which I can't see, mist in the hills, stars like a box of fishhooks, the beauty, beauty, beauty of some crows, quoting some crow hafiz. How strong the heart must be not to explode. My wife to sleep, her eyelids not quite covering the falconry of her loquacious dream. Maybe she loves me, but by accident. Maybe she doesn't, but quite happily. It could be worse. Think of the prophets whose howling had no end, of the stillness achieved through the howling. I love you, though not exactly I, and not exactly you. It's said that Shams of Tabriz could not see anything ephemeral without making it eternal. Maybe I could do that, starting now. No, now. Blue curtains, sirens, clouds, shadows, desire, dreams, things that I am, things that are here, pointings at radiance, what Blake called visions in the darksome air.
Yeah, speaking of images, beautiful one to end on there. That was Night Self by Michael Lavers. Michael, thanks so much for being a guest. It's been great get to know you better and really fun talking and wonderful listening to your great poems, too.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. It's been an absolute delight.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much. Yep, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, once again, that was Michael Lavers. You can find both of Michael's books at the University of Tampa Press, which is Tampa Press, the letter U, tampapress.org. So find that there, of course, in the show notes, his most recent. And now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a rondeau that features an unusual noun that begins with the same letter of your first name. That is the prompt for this week. If you have a poem that fits, please do share it with us. How you do that? First thing, email your poem to promptlines@rattle.com. That's promptlines, all one word, at rattle.com, so that you can show it on screen as you read, which helps everybody watching the show. Then find the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on YouTube or Facebook. Just jump onto the Zoom, but only if you have a poem to share. If not, the best place to watch is right where you are right now, because then you can see the poems too. And I should remind everybody too, as always, the max time on the camera should be about 3 minutes. It's a one-page max poem. So if it's a longer poem, just sort of jump right in. If it's a shorter poem, not filling up the whole page, you don't have to be so quick about it. But 3 pages, 3 minutes max, just so we can get to as many poets as possible without people falling asleep and going to bed. So we're going to take a quick break and go to the prompt lines. We'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. We've got our prompt poems editor associated and my wife, Katie Dozier, here. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. I really love that conversation. It was so interesting. I love all the turns it took. And then talking about declarative statement and imagist, it was really fascinating to listen to.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, I read a little bit of an interview and just knew it was going to be fun to talk to him. So that was fun. It definitely was. Now, the prompt for this week was again to write a rondeau that features an unusual noun that begins with the same letter of your first name.
I see there is an edit to the prompt.
Oh, yeah, I took out the word new.
Yeah, you did. Because I was starting to get frustrated with people being like, well, I dug up this poem out of my attic.
Yeah, that's not the point.
That's not the point. The point, if you seriously edit a poem that you hadn't looked at, that definitely counts. But I do want this to be a new poem.
A revision.
We're writing a poem every week, people.
But see, what I thought was having the word new implied that usually it's okay.
Yeah, that's true. That was just some of the. Yeah, I think it was a good edit, but just pointing out the edit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
Okay, and so you had a great poem here.
So I did play with the form of this, which I can say you did too, because I don't know, I always show my poems to you before, but I did show you this one. So when we looked at it, so
yeah. All right, here we go.
Okay. Rotten. I don't know how it's possible to look away. Every person among us deserves their own essay. The silent man cradled a dozen eggs until he laid them on the conveyor belt. Why did he pull his sleeves down on such a hot day? As if wool could wick away his purple bruises. I say I'm okay when friends ask. Even black bananas have a way to be of use, so I squeeze them. My fingers are so full. I don't know how it's possible to look away. I stare into her eyes and try to imagine she sees me. They survey a world with no one else. And the cashier never pays me. At home, I turn the tattered pages of The Big Bad Wolf, but villains rarely wedge in, spines out, on a shelf. They buy bananas, kombucha, themselves. I know how it's possible. They looked away.
Yeah, so great poem there, and a lot going on in it. Was it hard to write the form?
I actually approached it in a way that was pretty in line with what you guys were talking about during the interview a lot, which is I had the declarative statement that I'd written down. I've started trying to write my poetic bits, as I think David Kirby calls them, actually write them down. And it was one that I had, and when I wrote it, I knew I wanted to put it in some kind of a form because I wanted to play with continuing the meaning on it. So then when I looked back and I realized we had a form that has a refrain, I thought, I'll just spiral off that. And it felt like about the right length to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, great poem and really tough prompt, I think. The rondeau is not an easy form.
Yeah, well, it was funny when I finished and you were like, yeah, but where's the noun with the K in it? And I was like, kombucha! Yeah. Come on!
Really, I forgot. I reread it too. I still didn't notice the kombucha.
Kombucha is like our favorite drink also, so it made it funnier.
We got some kombucha right there.
We do. Oh, that's good news. I didn't see that.
Yeah, although it's warm at this point.
Well, it's not as good.
Warm kombucha not
Rotten.
as good.
It's tying into the poem a little too much.
A little too much. Yeah. Well, that was your poem, Katie, and I decided to take a week off. So, it's kind of a all hands on deck kind of week.
It is very much an all hands deck.
Hands. That's
yes,
it.
I have
Where's
two. Not enough hands.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I feel like I just need a break.
I gave him permission. I want it known. I did say, take a break. We're going to take it easy on writing and then really write a lot after 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm taking a 2-week creative sabbatical.
Okay.
Because the truth is, too, it's I haven't even mentioned this. The Rattle Poetry Prize deadline's coming up just in 9 days. On July 15th, and this time of year, I get 50 emails a day just with questions about the details of the contest that people.
I should have made that the prompt.
Yeah, definitely. That would have been better. And and I'm putting the fall issue together. We got a lot of other stuff.
We have a lot of stuff going on. You have permission. You're going to come back all the stronger.
Definitely am. Yeah. Well, anyway, so that is all we've got for me and Katie's poems. A wonderful one by her, and just nothing from me. But let's see what everybody else has.
You edited my poem, so.
I did. That's true. I helped a little bit.
You did. Okay.
Okay. Well, let's go first to let's jump right in with Amanda Harris.
I was not expecting to go first.
Well, of course, Amanda. We always gotta surprise you. It's true.
All right. So I got very old school with this, and I came up with Abyssinian. So just a reminder, my name starts with A, and Abyssinian starts with A. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Your fur like your spirit contains a constellation that does not obey time or thought. Many see you protest the protest of a nation, and as a result, violence hangs on their heads like a draught. I wish I could stroke your petty molecules, or at least, like a saint or mistress, pinpoint them. Those tiny demons of medical textbook misnames particles, and then mislabels, imitating mayhem. Your fur, like your spirit, contains a constellation that does not obey quiet, or anyway, the itch of quiet. Those who see you scream the scream of a nation, and as a result, violence hangs on their heads like a riot.
I love the slant rhymes in there. Very cool, Amanda. Was it tough? Because you usually jump in with really quick poems, and that's stretching it out
That's
a little
long
bit.
for you almost, Amanda.
Yeah, did you find it difficult to go a little bit?
I found that I was like channeling my 16-year-old self in a lot of ways doing that one.
Uh-huh.
My 16-year-old self was very Shakespearean, very old school, and didn't understand what modern poetry was about. So
Well,
when I saw the other ones that people were doing, and then I saw mine, I was like, well, what did I do here?
mm-hmm. Well, very cool. Really fun to hear that voice. Really different, and but the same energy as always, Amanda. Thanks for sharing
Yeah,
that.
thankfully.
Yeah. Great, thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
It was Amanda Harris with Abyssinian. Yeah, really interesting word there, too. Let's see. Next, let's go to, it's been a bit since we've seen Caitlin Bucksbaum here.
Hello.
Hey, Caitlin.
Hi.
Yeah, great to see you. It's been
You
several
too.
months. Yeah, how you been?
I just went and looked at my email, and the last time I sent you a submission was like almost a year and a half ago. So
Oh, wow.
even
It's
longer.
been that long.
Yeah.
time
Wow.
flies. But last week I graduated from my MFA program, so
Well, that explains it. Yeah. Well,
now maybe I
congratulations
have
on
time.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Rondo, woof. I have tried these before. I think maybe I was more successful before. I wrote this yesterday, and I don't think it really makes sense, but I'm gonna read it anyway.
Well, that's all right.
And
Yeah,
the
go
word
for it.
I chose, I don't even know how to pronounce it. Cacesthesia,
Sounds good to
maybe,
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
with a C. My name starts with a C. Um, and it's like, um, one definition I found was like a feeling of morbidity, but another more general definition was just like when something feels off, usually in your body. But anyway, here's what I got.
Okay.
Dysfunction crawls and scrawls across my skin, words of meaningless, ordinary whims. Nothing like the verses or the curses my hands know, but a pink pear that purses when poetry takes me for a spin. It's this normal that does us in, all the capitalist bear and grin, designed to keep us quiet versus the dysfunction that scrawls across my skin. Praise the weird and wonderful kin of strange and stark and rarely slim. This gushing well of sounds, it nurses the world-weary soul with hearses for the practical and perfect when dysfunction crawls and scrawls across my skin.
Yeah, very cool poem. And the fact I hadn't really realized, but I read something looking up the rondo that a type of rondo is actually a triolet too. Like they're all the
Yeah.
expansions of the same form actually, which I never knew.
And the redouble, which I have a guess that Jared Campbell's going to do a redouble. That seems like his jam.
I would not take that bet. But yeah, but like the triolet, really great use of the repetition
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Caitlin.
Yeah, great to see you again.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I hope
Thanks,
now
you
that you get a
too.
little more free time, you can come back and see you more often.
I'm going to try to write every week anyway. We'll see if I
Yay.
come
Great.
on.
Excellent. Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Good to see you,
Right.
Caitlin. Yeah, it was Caitlin Bucksbaum with cacesthesia. And I just realized I'm going to have to say all the weird words.
Yeah, I'm glad that's not my job here.
Okay, let's go next to Dick Westheimer.
You can tell you caught me off guard.
I did. That's unusual,
So-
but yeah, you're always
Because I was
prepped
looking
usually,
for my
Dick.
mouse. This was first of all, I loved writing a poem that came in under 100 words. That's always my goal. It rarely happens,
Oh.
but given this is I guess a syllabic in its purest form, didn't have much choice.
Yeah.
So, and I just like was so charmed. I don't know if this happens to you. I was so charmed by my own poem. I got to the end of it and went, "Holy cow, that is charming!" It's just this feeling. Like I kept going back and looking at it during the day and say, "How did that happen?" Uh, so
That's
I
great.
loved it. I loved the constraint. I loved being like pushed into this little box that I couldn't get out of and had to figure out, had to let it expose something to me I didn't expect.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Yeah, I'm excited to hear the poem.
Yeah. So here it is, and the word is runagate, which I used Richard because I couldn't find anything under D that I thought was musical enough to wind up in a poem. My first and only poem written before dawn. The gibbous moon's a runagate, fled from the dark it has escaped, the lonely death of the unseen. It hid all day behind the queen, the July heat, the blazing day, till pouring through my bedroom pane onto my pillow where it stayed, until behind my eyes I dreamed the gibbous moon herded all the stars away and locked them in a trestled cage, then gave to me a pin-shaped key. And by the light of her pale beam, I wrote the stars back into place behind the gibbous moon.
Very cool, Dick. That was a great poem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I love the way it, also enjambment and the way it swerves in on itself unexpectedly because of that.
Yeah, very Alice in Wonderland vibes for me on that one with the Queen.
Yeah,
We also watched that recently, obviously, I'm saying. But it does feel like that.
Yeah, well, it's hard to keep, with the syllabics and the rhymes and the tendency towards, we humans have towards I am to keep it from getting sing-songy. And forcing the enjambment helps with that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Well, really, great poem.
Nice.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm charmed
thank
as
you.
well.
Yep.
Yeah, it was Dick Westheimer.
I think that needs to be said more too, that we can allow ourselves to really enjoy our own poems. I love that Dick did that. Like, it's so much easier to be like, I don't really like this, or I don't, like he really, that one spoke to him. That's good. I'm glad he shared that with us.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the reason why we don't is because then there's those poems that we don't really love, but then other people are like, oh, that's great.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
don't wanna
It's risking something to say, like, I loved the feeling of writing this, and I'm proud that I wrote it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad he said that.
Yeah, it definitely is. Next up, let's go to, I got out of order here. Let's go to Sean Evaningo Sanders.
Well, hello.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, Sean, great
It's
to see
great
you.
to see you. Welcome back, Katie.
Thanks.
I panicked when I saw this challenge. I was like, oh no, I don't do form very well. But once I started it, I really had fun with it, and I was kind of like, yay, I did it. I got it done. So
Oh,
Oh,
great.
that's great. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, and try to tell a little story like I always do. So my word, I don't know how unusual it is, but it's synapse.
Neat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So here's the poem. Song of the Synapse Atrophied. He didn't expect it to happen this soon, the falling apart. His incessant swoon, for days she was plump with agility. Each day now a question of ability for lucid chats in the afternoon. There are days she's a maddening loon. He must remember to gently spoon feed her only small doses of memory. He didn't expect this so soon. We've all been cast the fool, many moons we've wasted believing youth will croon a much longer song. But her melody is a concerto played in a minor key. How quickly her synapses unloomed. No one ever expects it this soon.
Yeah, beautiful. I love the pause at the very end of the last line.
So musical. Yeah.
Yeah, that was wonderful, Sean. Yeah, I'm so glad you wrote one.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks for the nudge.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Sean Evaningo Sanders with Song of the Synapse Atrophied.
I really like having the extra space versus the triolet. I know, like you said, a triolet does count as a rondeau, but like I'm glad that Sean had the extra lines we needed to get the full story.
It's only
in
the
there.
triolet is so confining.
Yeah.
It almost like doesn't actually work. And
No,
so,
don't say that. Like the triolet, but we can get more story when we choose to.
yeah,
So,
yeah, that's definitely true. All right, next let's go to Hamid Malik.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Hamid, great to see you.
Hey, you too. Thank you. And I love being introduced to this form. Thank you. I love all forms, except Sistina's. I don't love Sistina's.
You and me
I
both.
love this one. And I was getting a bit sick of my serious poetry, so this may be a bit too light. They've gone a bit the other way.
That's a great direction to go. Yeah.
Lunchtime harlot. Lunchtime harlot of the food court. You lead me by my nose and flaunt your charms, coax my tongue to my lips, stir fries, curries, charred chicken, bliss. Hussy, what do they pay your sort? Then, when I'm handed what I've bought, you spin me till my eyes are caught. I need a custard pastry lift. Lunchtime harlot. Well, I've slaved at my desk distraught, and it's my thyroid's job to sort out any excess from my hips. I teeter at this keto cliff. You've won each battle that we've fought. Lunchtime harlot.
No, that's great. Yeah, the great phrase to repeat in different angles and
The
phrases.
keto cliff line is very funny too.
Yeah, well, very fun, and we definitely need more fun poems in this
Yeah,
world, so I
definitely.
appreciate it. Thanks, Hamid, for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Hamid Malik with Lunchtime Harlot. Next, let's go to Chelsea McClellan.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Chelsea, great to see you.
Good to see you too. Well, this poem is mostly written to myself, and if anyone has resonates with it, then that's great. And if you don't resonate with it, then you are not the you in the poem.
We should just put that disclaimer
Yeah,
on
that's
every
not a bad
second person. Nice.
And so the word I chose was chiasmus, and I thought it was fun that the oh gosh, what is this form called?
Rondo.
Thank you. The rondo. Oh no, my brain just shut off. The rhyme scheme of the rondo is a chiasmus of sorts of the, I think it's like AA, BB, AAA or something like that, with a B in the middle and then mirrored down the other side. So
Oh, that's right. I don't know what a chiasmus is, though. Do you? Okay. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. You could have just kept on pretending. But
I wasn't pretending. I was assuming she was going to do it. I was honestly replying in real time. Go ahead.
So chiasmus is basically just a mirrored, it can be mirrored words or mirrored ideas or mirrored construction. So mine is mirrored ideas. And then, so it's called chiasmus to myself. The point is not what we repeat. This time you're quicker on your feet, but the mountains round and round has humbled every man who vowed to scale up heaven's mercy seat. When you're exhausted, don't retreat back down its winding paths. Repeat, the peak has pierced the highest cloud. The point is not in what we repeat. Shame will taunt you. Don't retreat. The way is hard, but not discreet. The saints before tore through the shroud only by the mountains round and up. Each turn a quicker feat. The point is not what we repeat.
How interesting to use the word repeat, again in a refrain. That's really neat.
Yeah, definitely. I love that, the repetition of what you
repeat.
chose to do. Yeah.
I feel like we should see that a lot more, than we do. Like, it seems like it should be like cliche to do that because it's clever and neat. So
Yeah, very cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Chelsea.
thanks.
Yeah, if I may, really fast, I forgot the most important part of the chiasmus is there's something different in the middle, and that's supposed to be the main point.
Oh.
surrounded by the mirrored. So,
that's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, that really is. Yeah.
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 Thank you.
Well, I'm learning a lot this episode. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. That was Chelsea McClellan with chiasmus. It's one of those words I've seen before, but had no idea ever.
Well, obviously, I knew exactly what it was, according to you.
All right. Next up, let's go to Jeff Stumpo.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Hey, Jeff.
So the two quick things. One, I used this to unwind because everything I've written for the past couple of weeks has been really serious and really heavy, and this is the exact opposite.
Good.
Two, this is not me. I do not imbibe for fun. Every once in a while so that the nightmares stop, but I do not like being stoned as a general rule.
Duly noted.
Duly noted, yes. So this is generic for a rondeau for Snoop Dogg and for Big Pharma. Well, if the yoga don't relax you and your therapist playing games, if you don't attain nirvana from meditation, ain't no shame in trying out a little medication. You got buspirone, duloxetine, and methylphenidate, trazodone, fluoxetine, all acetylation. But if the yoga don't relax you and your therapist playing games, if you don't attain nirvana from meditation, and you don't fuck with anything you can't pronounce the name, consider Godfather OG or Blueberry Muffins, Purple Urkel Jabberwocky or a nice hit of Slurricane. If the yoga don't relax you and your therapist playing games, if you don't attain nirvana from meditation, ain't no shame in flying high with a nice fat blunt.
Oh, very fun poem, Jeff.
Well, yeah, thanks. I've been writing very
Please don't pick
serious,
that one.
dark poems, so that one was a breath of smoky air, I guess we could say. So,
It's so sweet.
thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. It was Jeff Stumpo with Generic 4.
Probably the first ever rondo for Snoop Dogg.
Probably. Yeah.
Let's hope it's not. But
Yeah.
you know.
There should be whole books. There really should. Okay, let's go next to Jared Campbell. We'll see what he's got.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Jared. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Listeners to the poetry space will know that the jacaranda is a tree that has, a profusion of purple blossoms in the springtime. So that's what I chose as a J noun.
I learned about that from Joe Barca. He taught me what that tree is on the poetry space, and I think of him every time I see it.
That's
I
what it
didn't
was.
know the name
Joe
of it, and I
Barca.
should have because I love purple. Is this a Rondeau Redoublé, Jared Campbell?
It is.
I
It's
nailed
a
it! I
Rondeau
swear I
Redoublé,
didn't know if
yeah.
you posted it. I just yes.
There you go.
This was all
All right.
of my brain power was guessing this. That's all of it gone for the week.
Well, it worked.
Oh.
It definitely worked.
I feel
Plus,
like I really know you.
I'm honored that you used all your brain power on me.
It was worth it.
The apogee. The apogee of purple spread an otherworldly canopy. I followed as you walked ahead beneath the jacaranda tree. You and I became a we that afternoon with nothing said. A limpid, certain memory, the apogee of purple, spread and weightless floating overhead. We lingered with that tapestry of Tyrian and trembling thread, an otherworldly canopy. I lived my life in absentee until you took my hand and led me into what I couldn't see. I followed as you walked ahead. And after both of us had read the signs of what was meant to be, we traveled back and vowed and wed beneath the jacaranda tree. It's shocking it's a decade we have shared a roof and name and bed. You still remain my master key of happiness, the fountainhead, the apogee.
Oh, what a sweet poem.
Oh, that's
yeah.
really nice. Aw.
And then a beautiful photo of a jacaranda tree,
Yeah,
too.
that's pretty amazing as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, beautiful, beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing that. And no surprise, though, that it's what is it called?
Redoublé.
Redoublé.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jared.
Yep, that was overachiever Jared Campbell with the apogee. All right, next go next to Nancy Tennell.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hey, Nancy.
This was fun. You know, in a musical rondo, it's the repeated refrain after every section of music. It's inserted however many times you want, but it's the total refrain each time. Not too far off from a poetic rondo.
Yeah, that's
But
really interesting.
the most fun for me was finding an N word that that would be something different. So my word is nabob.
I don't know what that is
The poem
either.
is called The Powers That Be.
Okay.
All the nabobs and potentates want to impress us, believing they can count on our blind trust in their wealth and power, their grand displays, their promises that there will be better days as they smile and sprinkle us with diamond dust. But their shiny promises soon turn to rust. That proverbial screw has now been thrust into our future. I shout foul play to all the nabobs and potentates. We have developed a great mistrust of those whose primary focus is their lust for power. Should we believe anything they say? Is money the only thing that speaks today? It's wealth, I'm afraid, that serves to corrupt all the nabobs and potentates.
Oh, well, that's a great use of that word, the nabobs and potentates.
Now, are you going to ask Nancy to define it or me? Because I don't know what it is.
It's a word that they developed for people who came into wealth and like to lord it over everybody. And of course, a potentate is someone with complete power. We have a lot of nabobs and potentates in our government right now. It seems to me.
That's to use it in a sentence, yes.
Yeah. Well, excellent
Great.
definition
That's
too.
really
And Rondo. Thanks so much for sharing that, Nancy.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, it was Nancy Tennell with The Powers That Be. Now let's go to Mike Bales next.
Yeah, it's nice to revisit this form. So, I don't use too many nickel words, so it's just a simple word, but it's not a word I use every day. I gotta say one thing about Rattlecast with all the prompts you're getting my family history, people I've almost forgotten about. This poem's called Morels. My uncle liked the early sun as the new day had begun. He bent over to pick the stems, tasty morsels of gems gathered on his morning run. He did it for enjoyment and fun, the greatest morning pleasure, bar none. No better time than the time when, away from everyday friends. He found them after a bend, a gathering of stems. When he was young, my uncle liked the early sun.
Yeah, really cool use of the form too, Mike. That was Morels. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And it's so light behind you.
Thanks.
How's it day still?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah.
Huh? What?
It's very bright behind you.
Boy, it's tricky in this room. And I like it because the paintings are behind me, but
Yeah.
like during the day, I have to turn around the other way, and otherwise, during the day, I'm actually washed out if I face this way. It's still light outside.
I know that's just weird to me because it's so dark.
It's actually light. It's actually lighter on the screen than it is in back of me.
Okay, well,
don't
that makes more
understand
sense.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have the lights, on the other side of me, which I think is good lighting, so I don't get drowned out. But I don't understand that. That window's almost like a painting.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I know.
definitely
That's
is,
how
yeah.
it looks. It looks like another painting behind you. It's interesting.
Now the big thing's is actually real.
Well, thanks so much,
Thanks,
Mike.
Mike.
Always a pleasure.
Okay,
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
thanks.
It was Morels by Mike Bales. Let's see. Next up, we'll go to Tina Denetclaw.
Okay, just when I was trying to look up
rondeau form because I think maybe I didn't do a rondeau, but I tried. Okay.
That's great.
So,
It doesn't matter. It's, the putting in the work is what matters.
You
I
thought
did.
you
I
were
put in
writing
the
a
work.
rondeau, so that's good.
I made the effort. So I did look up how to say this. Tarokami. Okay. So which is, it's a bullfight. Others may tell me I'm not exactly right, but what I understand is it looks like a bull fighting a matador, but there's picaderos who go in and lance the bull. So the bull is actually bleeding out while he's distracted trying to go after this flashy thing, and things he's not paying attention to are actually killing him. So that's kind of what my poem is about. Okay, sorry. And I was hoping that after Friday, or that this would be an obsolete poem, but unfortunately it's not. We'll get over it. We always do. Our working shoes worn down right through to the core of earth for another's greed, and someone else decides our need. We thought we had a voice in truth, but those were lessons in our youth. 100 years they strove to prove that poverty is a natural creed. We'll get over it. We always do. We sit outside glass walls and snoop for a sense of fortunes made or through, aloft to rot by heaven's steed. We'll get over it. We always do.
Yeah, well, great use of the way that refrain comes back around with a different sort of emotion behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah. Mhm.
You know, that comes from Mitch McConnell saying that we will get over this big bill. Don't worry about it. We'll get over it.
Yeah.
The public will get over it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Tina.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know the form well enough. That looks like that's like a rondeau to me.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I
was
would
looking at
not
other
have. I
people.
didn't see any irregularities with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I tried to get it right, but okay.
I
Thank
think
you.
you did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Tina. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, Tina Deniclaw with Taromaki, I think.
Everybody took the unusual noun thing very seriously, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I feel like my
definitely.
kombucha was very lame. In
It was
comparison.
subtle. It was subtly done. It was
Yeah.
well played. I think, did it help? I was going to ask.
No,
If it helped the direction of the poem?
No,
Did you know we were gonna have a
I
list of
literally
things there?
forgot about it, and then I was like, oh, I have to add. But then I knew it was rotten. It was like, hey, it actually works. So
Well,
I kind of
perfect.
lucked out there.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go next to Chelsea McGlynn.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Chelsea. Great to see you.
Yes. So first I have to tell you that last year you gave us a poetry prompt about writing about a place you've never been to before, but you want to go.
Ah.
And I wrote about Yellowstone, and that inspired me to finally actually book a trip. So I just came back from Yellowstone.
Oh, wow. That is
Oh,
so cool.
that makes me so happy. That's wonderful.
So
Thanks for telling
poetry,
us
yeah, poetry changes lives.
that. Oh, good. That's great.
But so my poem is called Coelacanth Worship, and coelacanth is considered a living fossil because it's a very ancient fish that hasn't evolved. It just has stayed the same as since it was the dinosaur times. So, coelacanth worship. My daughter asked me about her ancestors. Do they have to be human? What about hawks or that ancient fish? Capybaras and baby crocs? Who's our closest relative who was a dinosaur? I stumble and mumble, but settle on yes, yesterday creatures are part of our ad hoc family. My daughter asks, so should we pray to them? All the trimesters I was pregnant, I used animals to clock her growth. Hello, snail. Hello, fish. Hello, rock dove. Daily I honored all scale and fin and fur. My daughter doesn't need to ask.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love the way in the rondo form, that when it's not rhymed, there's a way that the refrain like hits you in a different way. Like you expect
there's
rhyme.
tension. There's tension right before it.
Yeah, it's a really
like
great
that.
example in the sounds of how that works, because it's like you expect a rhyme, then you're like, oh wait, it's the refrain, and there's something really musical about that. That's neat. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Chelsea.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Yeah, and enjoy the trip. When are you going? Is it
She
soon?
just got back.
Oh, I just came back.
Oh, I misheard. So how was it?
Yes. it was beautiful. It was great. I got to see so many animals. Had a angry bison try to trample me. Just all the classic Yellowstone experiences.
That could have had a much different result if you took the trip because it felt like eternal shame and guilt. So I'm glad that part worked out okay.
If that had happened,
Yes.
we would never know. That
No, I still would have known. Some part of my soul would have registered.
Oh, thanks so much, Chelsea. Yeah, really nice
Thank
rondo.
you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah. Yeah, that was Chelsea McGlynn with coelacanth or coelacanth.
You're
I
on
guess
your own there. That one, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Worship coelacanth
Coelacanth.
worship.
Coelacanth.
I thought
you
so,
said.
but it's spelled with a COE.
I just can't pronounce
know.
anything.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it should not be, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, thanks, Chelsea. Okay. Yeah, Chelsea McGlynn with coelacanth worship. I almost. It's like, okay. Let's go next to Rick Pongratz.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Rick. Great to
Hey.
see you.
It's good to see you all too. I think I tried to have entirely too much fun with this. So at least I enjoyed myself. And I tried to use a lot of unusual words. So then I had, for my own purposes, I needed to include a glossary for myself. So, uh, so I could track it all. But
Well, cool. Sounds
Yeah.
interesting.
yeah. So this is the rankled rhetorician rondo. Um, my rutilant skin, a Pavlovian response to her kiss. My rumpustion forgotten, I set my rummer down. I feared her husband would wish me leave town, for I knew he was a barbarian. I ran in search of the Arcadian, to the country with my gaze Jovian. I panicked to feel I still held her gown. With this moon not my friend, this rutilant skin, he caught me quick and off flew the avian. I'd make any deal, even the Faustian. No more Lovian could lessen his frown, for he whipped me good and called me a clown. Yes, I and my bandage may both be called fustian. My poor derriere and its rutilant skin.
Well, there are a lot of words I don't know there too. Do you want to read the glossary too?
Yeah, sure. I didn't know a lot of them either, and I was like, let's find weird rhymes, and so that's where I ended up. So Arcadian is kind of a rural happy place, not the movie with Nicolas Cage. Fustian has two meanings. It can mean, so that's where it works, fancy cotton cloth or someone who talks real good. Jovian has to do with Jupiter. Rumpustion is an alcoholic ale, raw egg, and a bunch of other stuff mix. Rummer's a fancy glass that one might drink a rumpustion from. And then rutilant is a red glow. So the red glow of the skin for those different contexts. But
Yeah, well, really cool. Yeah, great use of all those words and a really fun poem.
Yeah, I love the commitment to finding unusual rhymes too. It's so fun to find odd words.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
definitely. Mhm. Yeah. Well, thanks so much
Yeah.
for sharing
Thanks.
that, Rick. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Yeah,
You
you
too.
too. Yeah, that was Rick Pongratz with the Rankled Rhetorician Rondo. Good title too. I
Yeah.
overlooked that a little bit. Yeah, that's great. All right, next up, let's go to Zachary Honeycutt.
Hey, Tim and Katie.
Hey.
Hey, Zachary, great to see you.
Great to see you as well. These are really good. I'm really impressed with everybody so far. So I overdid it. I used zenith, zephyrs, and zebras. Oh my.
I love that. That's great.
My shadow follows. My shadow follows me around, although it never makes a sound, like sultry sun behind a tree, falling from the zenith of its apathy, stepping trepidly down on ground. Small dark men in long shadows now abound. Westward zephyrs carry lightly their sound, stretching them along the Serengeti. My shadow follows the flatlands like a hound, past contours of fat fire shapes, round meals downed, from within the half-open white marquee, within straw huts without calm, fearfully, they talk as zebras stand asleep, waiting me, my shadow.
Yeah, great repetition for you, Zach. My shadow is so fitting.
Z is my favorite letter of the alphabet, so I like all the Z's in there.
It's a great letter. That's why you're so good at Scrabble.
Q is the key.
God bless you. God bless you, Katie. You sneezed, I think, during
I
my
think I
reading.
coughed. I'm so sorry for. I'm sick also, so that's great. Yeah.
No, I meant it in a good way. God bless.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thanks as always, Zachary.
Have a
Always a
good one.
pleasure.
Bye.
Yep. With Zachary
See you guys
Honeycutt
next
with My Shadow Follows. All right. Next, let's go to Brian O'Sullivan.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, it's great to
Hey.
see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. So I have a vaguely rondo-ish poem that also, I was glad that the interview included a defense of low imagery, high telling poems, because this might be that. But you go. Had fun with it, though. A rondo in which baboons are unfairly disparaged.
That's a
In
great
this
title.
universe of sheer baboonery, this world so base, profane, sublunary, what makes us think we can find sense or beauty, or just some motivation to do our duty? In this universe, should we speak of duty here, where we know that presidents are pirates seeking booty, and even poets get a little snooty? In this universe, present company accepted, by the way, in this universe of sheer baboonery, she smiled and shook her head. Let duty be. Just join me in a moment's reverie. Drink half a drop from the river Lethe, and know that I am still your sweetie, and that love survives base lampoonery, especially in a world of sheer baboonery.
No, that is great, Brian. And I think this form really suits your voice. Like, I so love when you go funny places.
Leafy and Sweetie. Also, too, I had to cough, so Tim had to mute the mic. So it was probably good it was muted because it edited out some of my laughter because I was really laughing. But
I always like to hear your laughter, so it's too bad, but okay.
Oh, thanks. I promise I was laughing. That's great. The rhymes are so funny. I think you should write more of these if you aren't considered, like Tim was just saying. I think it suits your voice very well.
Yeah,
I'm trying to do one in actual octosyllabics. This one I just kind of let fly.
Nice.
No, sorry, Jared won't know, so I won't do it.
Well, thanks so much,
Brian.
Brian. Yeah,
Thanks,
always such
Brian.
a pleasure.
Take care.
Yeah, it's Brian O'Sullivan with a rondo in which baboons are unfairly disparaged.
And they were very unfairly disparaged. How dare he?
Yeah. Let's go to Billy D next. Hey, Billy.
Well, I'm primarily a Japaniform poet these days. I started off as a language poet, but somebody
Interesting.
intervened
Mm-hmm.
mid-career. But so I looked for the most brief, plain-spoken form of the rondo I could find, and there is a 13-line variation, and it's sometimes called an English rondo. And so I used and it's not titled. The counted syllabic or octosyllabic one typically is not titled. So that goes along with my haiku.
Well, that's perfect. Yeah, I did not know
tradition,
that.
or my haiku tradition. Anyway, beyond the Indigo Mountain, the sky flattens and sunlight thins. No cell signal where wind begins to scrape the distant ridge, uncertain where the road drops through horizon. Beyond the Indigo Mountain, what's left unsaid remains unmeant. A lone crow lifts against the wind. No fences hold, no trail defined as day folds shut. As dusk unspools into star-peppered night, aligns where horizon fades, dream begins beyond the Indigo Mountain.
Yeah, beautiful use of the form. It's a really beautiful descriptions there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
I go for the spare.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Billy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Billy D with Untitled, Beyond the Indigo Mountain. Next up, let's go to Steve Horrell.
Hey there. I have a
Hi,
couple of
Steve.
quick things to say.
Uh-huh.
I have never written a rhyming form poem in my life.
Oh, nice.
So
Well,
when I saw
congratulations.
I
Yeah.
had to write a rondo, I thought this is not going to happen. So I'm out in the field weeding my peppers, and I had just received a rejection for my misfit poems. It was a misfit poem contest, and I thought mine are all misfits anyway, but apparently they weren't. So the whole morning I was out there, I had this sort of earworm or whatever, and I kept saying, "Help me, Rhonda! Help me, Rhonda!" So that's what I titled this. And right after I wrote this, I went back and I had another series of poems rejected. So, at any rate, so this is my first attempt at a rhyming form of any kind, and the S word is sneeboer, which is the name of the hoe that I used while I was weeding. It's a made in the Netherlands. Anyway, I did send you some pictures too, but I never see these on Zoom. Anyway, so this is called "Help Me, Rhonda, Help Me, Rondo." I slide the sneerbore hoe back and forth, back and forth. Weed the rows, 800 peppers. Today diversion, not pleasure. My misfit poems all rejected. Even the ode on varicose veins in the scrotum. Had hopes for one more endeavor, slice the sneerbore. Even a full hippie shot, no, none of it much worth. Gather together the nevers. Rejection should make me better. Thank God for Cab Merlot. I slide the sneebore hoe.
Oh, that's wonderful. Another playful poem.
Anyway.
It's a really fun form for that. And then let's pull up these photos too. Here's the. Oops, I gotta click over here. Here's the
hoe in question.
Yeah, wow, that is an interesting device.
Yeah,
I've never seen one of those
and
before.
the peppers.
It's a very. I've had that for probably 30 years, and you can still get them, but they don't make the T that sort of slanted T handle anymore. It's just a knob at the end, which is a sacrilege to me.
Well, I could definitely imagine.
At any rate,
why.
thanks. This was a very good evening all around. It's great.
Yeah, wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we should say that we're showing the picture of Steve with the peppers too.
I'm going to count to make sure there are 800.
I trust him. I trust
Just
this man.
kidding. I believe.
Oh yeah, well, I didn't want to get technical. We planted 825, and I probably have about 815 left.
Nice.
That's I don't know. There's two pictures. The field behind me
Mm-hmm.
is the peppers are in on the one. But
Yeah,
at any
looks
rate,
great.
Yeah, it really does.
I'm going
yeah.
back. I'm going back to YouTube because I like to read the poems.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Well,
bye.
well, thanks so much for sharing that, Steve. Yeah, so that was Steve Horrell with "Help Me Rondo, Help Me Rondo." And next up, actually, I have to cough. Oops. See, we got you off the camera every time.
Okay.
And I'm the one who botched it.
No.
All right. Let's go to Carla Schwartz next.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Hi,
yeah,
Carla.
good to see you, Carla.
Great to see you guys and great to be here. Great to hear everybody's rondos, which I think were fantastic. I just finished this today and I don't know if mine is fantastic, but I used the word crepuscule, which means twilight.
Yeah, no, very cool.
Muted crepuscule after the wildfires. Oh, and this is a one-sentence poem. It's only a small bite into July, and I wake to a haze-covered sky. The heat of the last 7 days falls heavy on the lake, conveys the sort of immobility that mimics my mortality as I prostrate myself frankly, to bed the only desirable place when it's just one small bite of July and the morning pretends to defy the raging tempests that fly as the climate inevitably pays us back for decades of betrayal while governors cover their ears and eyes with no relief as the day inches toward twilight, this blur of sky, this small bite into July.
Well, very cool to make a one-sentence rondeau, and you know how much enjambment and twisting and turning goes into that, getting the same phrase in 3 times. Yeah.
And the small bite into July is like the perfect month for that. I was thinking today, I mean, there's like every type of fruit in the world is ripe, basically, is how it feels now. Like our fridge is overflowing with it. So I think that's a particularly great month to have said that about.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Thank you so much.
That, Carla. Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, Carla.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah. It was Carla Schwartz with Muted Crepuscule After the Wildfires. Let's see. Next, let's go to Ollie.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Ollie, how you doing?
I'm pretty all right. How are you guys?
Yeah, I'm great. Yeah, thanks for joining. What do you have to share for us?
So I tried the rondo. It was my first time writing one.
Great.
I'm not super proud of this one because I have a tendency of whenever I write in form, I tend to make it narrative, and so that means there's not a lot of imagery there. But I'll get to it. Eat your refrain. In my year as an abiturient, I was in an utter lack of nutrients due to various symptoms of an anorexic nature. I couldn't get any treatment because though the weight loss was serious, the weight itself wasn't, and my belly still appeared plump. In my year, my depressive lack in confidence was made up by my deficiency in calories and my affection in vigorously counting them. The only use of me being sentient in my year.
Yeah, well, that last line, a great example of those straightforward, lines that work really well.
I love the title also. Eat Your Refrain is very interesting on multiple levels. So I think that's great, and you should be proud of your poem and having written it. And I love narrative aspects in poems, but I think that's no reason to keep out the images too. Exactly. I don't think I choose everything all at once. So my policy. So thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, Allie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was Ollie with Eat Your Refrain. Let's see, that's going to wrap up the Zoom, I believe. Let's see what... I think we might have missed Nivy. I didn't see her on there, but let's see. We'll read Nivy's. And she says, let's see, loosely, and use a noun with the first letter of the name. The noun is nacre, a word for mother of pearl. Oh, and she's flying, so I wasn't able to make it. Well, let's share a poem anyway. And here Nivy's poem is this. Why I don't like nacre anymore. She thought of herself as a nacre, but didn't realize the stain it put black as coal on the pristine rondo form. Originally an iridescent white, shimmering all colors of the rainbow. Notice how it's never black, never tarnished in reputation, just a pristine, rounded, beauteous shield. And to think she thought of herself as a nacre. Now, for me, nacre has lost its luster, its allure, its charm, its sheen, tarnished by association through no fault of its own. Oh, mother of pearl, I do apologize that I find you lacking through no fault of your own. From now on and forevermore, all because she thought of herself as a nacre. Yeah, well, that's a beautiful thought. Thanks so much for sharing that, Nivy. Why I don't like nacre anymore. Am I saying that word right?
I don't know.
Okay. It might be knacker.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much for sharing that. Oh, yeah, Jared's giving me a thumbs up over here on the Zoom. So I said it wrong the whole time. Sorry,
Jared's like when during Jeopardy and they have to go to the people that actually know things.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah, thanks, Jared.
Way to go, Jared.
All right. And next up, let's read Ted Guevara's poem too. As always, Ted's got a picture, and this is a blindfolded woman melting into a puddle, maybe just standing in a puddle, next to a empty tree, as you can see. Okay. And somehow that will apply to this poem.
She's blindfolded.
And she's blindfolded? Yeah. Lineage. Thorn, why is this on your side? And so out there and in full ride, forget about the despondent sea and curse and this limited pool you thirst. Why has your body taken up the cue, like your grandmother's and your niece-to-be? Care for others. Be humane, one hopes you be. But to be born, limited and askew, is hardly a seed in the sand. Shallow, it burrows amidst demand. If it's religion that distorts your dry, let its water disperse in kind and deny. Thorn, why is this in you? Translate parchment into will and good for your grandmother, your niece, your livelihood. A nice couplet at the end. That's interesting use of the form. There's Lineage by Ted Bernal Guevara. And that will wrap up the show. As I mentioned before, I'm taking a creative hiatus, so I didn't do a haiku either. So let's just jump right into what the prompt is going to be.
Which will be a surprise to you because usually I tell you in advance at this time.
You have not seen this before. I have not. I have to pull it up over
Hope you like it.
Different document and scroll all the way down past the 111 pages
prompt poems I've
poems
written
that Katie's written. Okay.
Since coming up with the prompt, it doesn't even count the ones before.
Okay. And the prompt is going to be...
We'll see. And if there's a typo here, this is my fault.
Okay.
Okay. Next week's prompt. Write a poem in which something is tasted on vacation that never should have been. Include a declarative statement.
Interesting. Yeah. So that declarative statement, was that after?
That was after. Because I was thinking too, I really like that part of the discussion because to me, in my own poems, when I reach the declarative statement, that's, I think, usually the strongest line. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a thing where I'm like 3/4 of the way and I get to like, that was what was leading me to it. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to see how everybody else feels about that too.
Well, very cool. A poem or something is tasted.
And bonus points if this doesn't go to food poisoning. I don't really want to read 500 food poisoning poems. So if you really have to, write it. But I think we can be more creative than that because everybody was super creative tonight. So
great set of great round of rondos.
Yeah,
I guess you could say tonight. Thanks for sharing it, everybody, and really fun prompt for next week too, Katie. Looking forward to it.
Thanks. And then so next week we are going to be playing the interview, right?
No.
Next
week's guest in the Rattlecast.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. We still got 2 weeks.
Okay, sorry.
Ruth Reichel will be, there'll be no show. We could say it, though, ahead of time. In 2 weeks from today, no show. We're going to replay the Ruth Reichel interview from the summer issue of Rattle, which should be a lot of fun. It's one of those where we're filling in a pre-recorded show.
But next week's normal.
Except
that we'll also be announcing the prompt poet of the month.
Yes, we
will. To be determined
Mm-hmm.
yet. Everybody's still in the running there. So
definitely, yeah. And so next week's guest is going to be... Oops, what did I do? Next week's that's going to be Chad Frame.
Oh, I'm excited about Chad Frame. He wrote one of my favorite poems of the last few years.
Yeah. Chad Frame has a Claw Machine in the spring issue of, the last winter's issue of Rattle. It was a Rattle Poetry Prize finalist last year. Love that poem. He's got a book out, just Little Black Book, and you can see on the screen it is a little black book, so that's an interesting choice. That's Chad Frame, really great poet. He also, we'll probably talk about this, but he had a poem that we critiqued on the Critique of the Week like 5 years ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think way back when it was on Facebook. And it was so good that we were like, hey, we'll change one word and let's publish it. And then we just did. It's Smoking Shelter. So if anyone wants to go find that.
Oh, I didn't know that originated that. I've seen that poem.
Yeah. I think we made more than just one word. We edited a little bit, but otherwise it was just great. And we said, we'll probably publish that.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway, Chad Frame, great poet. He's been Poets Respond To, and including that wonderful Claw Machine poem we mentioned. So I'm looking forward to talking to him, get to know him better. That's Rattlecast number 301. And once again, the prompt was write a poem in which something is tasted on vacation that never should have been. Include a declarative statement. We'll see you next week right here at the regular time, Sunday, July 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.